You want to play a game?
What game are we playing today on the Feud?
Have you ever heard of the movie Inside Out?
I may have only watched it with you.
So the answer is yes.
Yes.
Well, for anyone who doesn't know the movie Inside Out, it is a story about a kid who has a brain, and inside that brain has 5 different personality types: joy, sadness, fear, disgust, and anger.
Mm-hmm.
And that movie's fantastic and one of my favorite movies Pixar's probably ever made.
That's great. I love
It's
it.
right up there with Up. See what I did there? And
I'll slap it for you, everybody.
and it's just one of my favorite movies. But one cool thing is Sarah and I like talking about, even Nalani sometimes when we have this conversation, is the idea that like that movie's so entrenched with this idea of like, oh, when you look in the adults' brains in those movies and stuff like that, you see like there's one personality type that's like the leader and everyone else has like the followers kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And it kind of talks about like, you know, like the dad has anger issues because he's got anger as his main guy, and the mom has maybe depression issues or some kind of empathy issues that she goes with or struggles with, you know, some kind of like ideology with that because she has sadness as her leader and everything.
Yeah.
And so I kind of thought, let's make a little game out of it.
We're gonna get sad.
Yeah, we're gonna get sad. I decided that we should make like a top 1 through 5 of the emotions that we think we best amplify, or like is the leader of our, like the hierarchy of the personalities. And we're gonna do one where we're gonna do yourself. It's a self observation, and then we're gonna do one of each other. And then we'll go. What we'll do is like we'll do you first, so we'll get your opinion on yourself, and then I'll get my opinion on yourself, and then.
Then you get your opinion on yourself, and then I get my opinion on yourself.
Yeah. And then we talk about that. It's a cool game. I made it up. I'm going to write mine down, and then I'm going to hand the pen over to you because I only have one pen. I couldn't find another.
We have a house of one pen.
Very classy.
Only one pen.
We plan things ahead here at HuckyTalker. So don't look. Close your eyes.
So are you drawing like a? Is this like a portrait thing that you're drawing, or are you?
No. We're just
writing out some words.
We're just writing out a list.
And then did we not set a time limit for this? Because I don't feel like we set a time limit. You got 10 more seconds.
Hold up. No, I'm not even done with yours. Calm down. You have editing. The powerful world of editing. Shut up.
Remember when people go and then you're going like.
I'm writing them big and fancy so the picture can see them. Why do you critique everything I do in love? All right, your turn.
He's a bit dramatic, everybody. Okay, let's see. Personality. N-A. Done.
Did it. Proud of you.
Oh god, I don't know why I'm having such a hard time thinking of personality trait words.
No, it's you're doing just the 5 characters from Inside Out.
Am I not understanding the?
Yeah, you do the 5 characters of Inside Out. What we think are the top leaders of the Inside Out.
Oh, inside your brain.
See, I told you were gonna do it wrong.
See, that's what you get.
Oh, cool. No, that's not what you get. Put it away. Get another piece of paper.
Fine, close your eyes.
All right, now we got to go do it all over again.
He wonders why I'm going to take so long. Done.
So we're gonna do Greg first.
All right, Greg, is for you.
Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
okay.
So this is what I think of Greg and person who's control. Whoop-boom! Number 1 for Greg is anger. I think anger is the leading person of your person. And the reason why... Well, hear me out. Because the thing is like, it's very vague, like, what goes on. And you have to kind of read a lot into the movies of what's how things are happening and what's going on. And so, like, with anger... a lot of anger shows more than just like he's just pissed off all the time or he's just really mad all the time. It shows a lot of time that he gets really passionate and excited about things, and he gets really like motivated to be somewhat aggressive. And for someone like you don't really exude like excitement, kind of like how Joy would. Like you're not like a like bouncy, lovey, crazy person, but you're very passionate about the things you like. For example, like when we talk about football, when we talk about situations like things that you like and things that you don't like, you're very, very opinionated and boisterous about them. So that's kind of why I picked like anger to be your person. Your next person, I think, is fear, because fear is, well, think about what fear does. Like, you know, like when people have fear, it's not just like, oh God, I am a scaredy cat and worried about everything. No, it's a person who rationalizes and goes, that doesn't sound like a good idea. That doesn't sound like something I would do. Because it's not really like, I'm not really into that kind of thing like that. And I think that's like a lot of what fear does. It's like focuses on that kind of situation. And then the last three were kind of like, it was hard for me to picture like best three for you. So I just kind of went like, discuss joy, sadness. Not necessarily in any particular order. It was just more of like that. Those are just your bottom three. And it's
That's really interesting you focused on anger and fear so much with me.
Yeah.
I thought joy would be up there. Am I not a joyful person?
You're a nice guy. You know, it's not even like joy. Like for people who are joy, they're kind of like the protagonist. They're kind of like the bubbly, outgoing, outspoken, charismatic. You know.
Oh yeah, I don't have that.
Yeah, like yeah. So that's why I'm like, like when I see joy and like picture joy, like sure they strive for joy. All of us strive for joy. All of us strive for excitement. But if you look at the character of Joy in the movie, Joy was a character that was very bubbly, very charismatic. The person that she was in charge of, drawing a blank on the character's name, Riley. She was like for Riley, she was like an easygoing, happy-go-lucky kind of girl, and of course sadness came in the story, and sadness brought envelopment, but sadness for the most part was always the behind-the-scenes emotion. She never really emphasized much sadness because she was a happy-go-lucky girl. It was polar opposite. And so that's why like all of us have these emotions. All of us can lean on these emotions and do these kind of emotions. But who is the one that's in charge was kind of the cool. Who is the hierarchy of the situation? Like when sadness and joy left, disgust, anger, and fear were in charge of Riley, and they didn't know how to run anything because Riley wasn't really exemplified any of those like characteristics. They weren't that big of a deal. Because Joy was the big honcho, the one that was really in charge of most of the things. And sure, like those emotions came out every now and then, but it only came out in situations. So that's me. That's my interpretation.
So of Greg. His interpretation of Greg again is anger, fear, disgust, joy, sadness, in that order.
In that order.
I'm not sad.
I'm not a sad
I'm
guy.
not a sad boy. So for Leon, I had sadness as your number one motivator. And as you said, sadness is a lot more complicated than just being sad.
I'm sad.
I mean, you've had a lot of rough experiences in your past that you kind of draw from and learn from and motivate you to do a lot of other things and more things in the future.
Well, the one thing about sadness, especially in the movie, that I think that you're picking up on was that especially like when the Bing Bong, the imaginary character that Riley was picturing, like he lost his little wagon and like went into the pit of like non-forgetfulness, blah blah blah, like that area, and he started getting really really sad. Sadness came over and comforted him in an empathetic way, and I think,
and you're really good at doing that.
I wouldn't say I'm great at that, but I do. That is something I strive to do. It is something I focus on. Like
He's a lot better than you think he is.
I really care about what people are thinking and how they feel, and I'm willing to work out their emotional ties to what they are. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm like a ushy-gushy emotional person myself, because I'm not, but I'm willing to work out emotions and rationalize emotions to make people realize that it's okay to feel the way you feel. So I guess that kind of makes sense.
Okay, so I switched these around the way I didn't want them to because you saw I was writing the right word. I meant to do anger next because you get the same way that I do. You get pretty passionate about things, and you get
No, I don't.
You get angry about
No, I don't.
some stuff.
I don't.
Some things.
I don't.
I'm really good at scribbling things.
I don't.
So, yeah, basically the same thing he said for me for that one. And then I would say, you know, when I really think about it, you do get disgusted at things pretty easily sometimes. So I'd say disgust is a number 3 for you.
That's fair.
Because it's not necessarily in a negative way. It's like you know what you like and don't like. And when you don't like something, you just like, oh.
No, that's legit fair, because that's like the thing. Like, she protected Riley from broccoli. She protected Riley from situations. Like, she had that, like, when she started getting to the adolescence, like, you know, talking back to mom, disgust was always like, oh, whatever. Like, you know, it's kind of like I don't want to talk to you about this.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of the disgust that it was. There's like this disdain that you don't have. That's kind of like the attitude of disgust. I do have that. If I'm not into something, I am not afraid to tell you. I'm not into this.
Yeah.
Just not into this. So I get it. That makes fair.
And then after that, probably fear and joy last.
I'm not a happy guy.
He's happy, but in a different way.
Well, I think anger replaces my joy in a lot of weird ways. Like, my passion replaces my joy. I get passionate about things. I get immensely passionate about things. I get super excited and like things. And my joy does come out through those excitements, but it's also a double-edged sword, because even if I get passionate about something, like, for example, football, we've talked about in previous videos of all the time that I love college football. I love watching college football. I love seeing part of it, but I can't stand the system in which it is now, so it doesn't mean I'm not passionate about it. It doesn't mean I'm like, okay, I'm done with college football now. No, I'm just passionate enough to be like, you need to change your system, change it, fix it. Do better.
Up.
Do better. And
so many people in the country agree with that right now because it's terrible.
Yeah, and so I think that's why my passion takes over, like my anger and my joy, for my joyness and all that stuff.
And now I'm going to do Leon because we're going in reverse order now because I want to.
Okay. So Greg, you're doing Greg.
So Greg is doing Greg, and Greg did not know Greg before, didn't really understand the emotions. So Greg labeled himself as joy, anger, fear, sadness, disgust. And I feel like joy and anger really do go hand in hand with me. That's just my own opinion.
No, that's the point of having opinions.
Because I mean, joy is just like I see it in the sense of the movie, and the movie takes a much more psychological approach to joy, obviously. And sure, to some extent, anger is much more prominent in my decision making. Sometimes, you know, it gives me a passion. I don't always I use logic with a lot of things, but there are some decisions where I just do not use logic. I go with what my heart wants me to do, and so it's fueled by anger and joy. And then fear is number 3 for me because that's what keeps me in check for a lot of things. And it's not necessarily the most healthy thing, which is why I try to put joy and anger before that, because those actually use some logic and sense before fear does. And then sadness is, I have very little motivation from it, but I do have some. I think
sadness, though, is your last one. And I mean, you put it near your last, so it makes a lot of sense. But
as a sadness and disgust, I wasn't really sure which one should go where.
Yeah, well, that's the same thing for me. For my number 1, I did fear, because I think that most of the time in my life, I am incredibly hesitant to do anything because I rationalize everything. And I think fear is your rationalization. Fear is, like, I think that's the embodiment of what fear is that the reason why you're afraid of something is because you're rationalizing things. You're rationalizing things you cannot predict. And that creates hesitation. Yeah. And that leads me most of the time to doing a lot of stuff that I just don't do. I just don't do this kind of stuff. It takes a long time for me to come up with videos. It takes a long time to express myself on YouTube and to be silly and zany. Like, today I've done a great job about it, but it took me a lot to get here. And so, like, and even today I was sitting there going, like, do I really want to do this? Because I'm going to look like an idiot, and people are going to start making fun of me. And I don't care necessarily what people think, but I just... But
at the same time, you do care what people think.
Exactly. So it's like one of those things where it's like, I want this to come out good. I want this to come out right. If I'm just letting loose and letting myself be who I am, I've never been popular in my life. Why all of a sudden would people start liking me? And, so I really think that fear is my leading person who tells me how to do things, which is a good and a bad thing, because it makes me incredibly rational, makes me incredibly decisive, makes me incredibly committed to not making mistakes, but it also makes me complacent. It makes me incredibly docile towards making actions that could actually lead to something better to me. So it's like a good give and take. And I think that's what I think I like about fear. My number 2, I couldn't decide between sadness and anger. I think sadness and anger is like equal, in my opinion. Like they're both in charge of my way of envisioning like what like you've explained this to me too. I'm like one of the quietest and one of the loudest people you've ever met. And I think that comes from my sadness, and it comes from my anger. It depends on the time. Yeah,
it
like,
really does.
It's like, so like I'm like the most like calm, like really emotional, quiet person to someone coming out, I'm happy, like moving to like anger, like I'm so passionate about this. And so yeah, and that's why like
he has the same voice for both though.
Yeah, that's why.
I'm really happy.
I'm happy.
I'm really angry.
I'm mad. I'm sad.
You can only tell by his facial expression, basically. Which one was that?
Disgust. So for joy and disgust is also a hard one for me. I think joy is my number 4 and disgust is my last one. There is one thing though that disgust has that does control me, is I hate touching things. I hate textures. And I think disgust is like my leading culprit of just like, don't want to touch it. It looks gross. It's meaty. It's not meaty. It's slimy. It's gooey. It's gross.
Wow, that's a really mean way of describing my skin.
And so yeah, I think joy and disgust go into my bottom. But it's the biggest thing about this, I think, is like the leader. Who is the leader? And the number 1's for everyone. I think it's fear for me. I actually think it's anger for you. And you think...
I think it's sadness for you.
Uh-huh.
And not that.
I think it's fear for you. Or not anger. Excuse me. I think it's anger for you.
It's a weird thing to think about, anger being a lead.
Yeah, but it's also a good thing.
That seems to be very much a masculine thing, too. Where anger just takes the place of sadness because we're not supposed to feel sad.
And it's true. And to be honest, why I think sadness is your last one is I've known you for a decade. I've never seen you cry. I've seen you tear up. I've seen you wallow up. But I've never actually seen you like, my life sucks. Like, I've never actually seen you cry. And I don't think you...
I'll be honest, I can't.
Yeah, like, it's kind of one of those things. Like,
I just beat it out of myself as a child, basically.
I'm not going to cry anymore.
Not physically beat it out,
but... do it.
There was once where I got hit in the lip with a baseball bat when I was a 12-year-old, and I'm like, I can't cry. I can't cry. I was just like, I had so much fear. God damn it, get that.
Haha.
I was in fear of judgment, apparently, even as a child, even though that's not what I thought at the time, if I didn't understand it. But I felt so much pressure from masculinity over my life that I thought I'm going to be the big, sturdy, tough man if I want to have a wife someday and take care of my family. And now I'm like, why was I ever taught that?
Yeah.
This is so unhealthy.
Yeah.
It's so freaking unhealthy. The masculinity thing that men are supposed to do all the time. No, you can be masculine part of the time, and then kind of just let that go after a while, if you really need to, because we all need a little bit of TLC. I don't know.
Tell me your story. What do you think your number 1 character is? If you haven't seen Inside Out, please go see Inside Out.
Oh, it's amazing.
It's an amazing
We need to watch
movie.
that again soon, because you have that movie, and I need to watch it.
We should watch that movie. We're going to watch that movie.
Right now.
See you later.
Oh, God! I thought you were going to do something on purpose.
No, I legitimately didn't mean it.
Oh, God.